The Renaissance period presents Rebellious Voices, the podcast discussing everything menstruation. Yes, everything. We'll meet at the intersection of arts, literature, advocacy, policy, and most importantly, community. Join us. Okay, and now we're back for the second half of this conversation about menstruation and generational traumas and how we take the conversation forward. And so I just mentioned that you are now up for
Mhm.
a hysterectomy for yourself. And why don't you tell me a little bit about your experiences um, with menstruation, like the extreme experiences, and how you've had those conversations with your
Yeah.
daughter?
So, um, my experiences have been. It's actually progressed over the years. It started where it was just like really bad cramps, but a normal flow, and then it became a really heavy flow,
Mhm.
um, with still the really bad cramps, and then I decided to do birth control, which I absolutely regret, um, because
Oh,
it helped initially, and then um ultimately made things worse. So it was like while I was on the birth control, and
okay.
this is I'm specifically talking about the Nexplanon, where it's inserted in your arm and you keep it for a few years.
Huh.
And so the first couple years, it was fine, and my cycles were normal. They were regular and not, very painful. And then the when it got close to the time that I had to get it taken out, they became very irregular. They were heavy, painful, and then I got migraines. And I
Mm.
couldn't figure out like what the heck is going on. It's because the hormone was wearing off. And so,
Ah, yes. Yes. That's a big
yeah.
yeah, that's a big change too that is stigma that
And
people
so for
miss.
me, I
Yeah,
was like, well, I don't want to go through
hormonal.
that,
Yeah.
every time the hormone starts to wear off. And mind you, it was wearing off
Yeah.
early. It wasn't even time for me to get it removed, but it was wearing off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, not going
Huh.
down that road. Oh, and then I gained a whole lot of weight too. Which I was
Gotcha.
not able to lose until I had Savali and I was breastfeeding. And then that's when I was able to
Yeah.
lose some of that weight. But yeah,
Yeah.
so since then,
Wow.
coming off of the birth control, my I started tracking my own like ovulation and when my cycle is supposed to come. I started tracking it myself so that I can be prepared. And it became very
Yeah.
regular and it was very spot on. And it wasn't it was very heavy, but the pain wasn't as great. Um
Significant. Yeah.
then let's say hmm, maybe right after, like when I got my cycle after having Savali, once that finally came after breastfeeding, it came back with a vengeance. Like I
Yeah.
it was ridiculous. The
Yep.
pain, and now the pain shifted. It's not even cramps in the front anymore. It's all back pain. And yeah.
Interesting. That's what I was starting to
Yeah,
experience
it's
after
all back
breastfeeding.
pain where I can
Wow.
barely move. Um
Yep.
I again, hemorrhage every month, and it progressively got worse where I'm like about to pass out. And I'm in bed for 2 days, and so I said, "You know what? Something I have to do something." So I decided I'm going to go talk to my doctor, and I was like, I'm not going back on, you know, a pill or anything. I was like, I've tried all these different birth controls and I'm not doing those again. But they also didn't recommend it because I have migraine with aura. So the hormonal ones I can't do anyway. And that's because of the
Okay.
risk of heart attack, I believe. Um, so
Yes.
my only other option was to do the depot injection.
Or stroke.
Oh, stroke.
It's
You're right, stroke.
stroke, I
Yeah,
thought.
but yeah, my only other option was like, hey, do the depot injection, which I was like, I'm not doing that. But she didn't recommend it anyway because after about 2 years of being on that, it can start to cause bone loss.
Oh, the
Yeah, so
osteo
it she
issues, yes. Very interesting. You're the first person I've heard actually refer to that or have that problem
mhm.
besides
Yeah.
reading it in, like,
So
clinical
that's why
stuff.
she didn't recommend it. She was like, because
Huh.
it's not a long-term fix for you. So we
Yeah.
decided, okay, we should look at the ablation, doing the uterine ablation. And so I was like, okay.
Mhm.
So I went, had the consult, and within that consult, long story short, we just kind of determined that hysterectomy would be the better option because then I won't have to come back and go under the knife again. So
Again.
that's where we are. And
Exactly.
so I've talked to Elena all the way through, like, you know, of course when she's able to comprehend what's going on. But yeah, I've
Mhm.
just been very open and honest with her about my cycles, how it's felt for me, the experiences I've had with birth controls as well. But I also kind of showed her, like, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is what you can feel um, leading up to it. So I told her, what was it? Like sometimes you can feel when your cycle's coming because of all those different symptoms,
Mhm.
um, and so she was kind
Yeah.
of more prepared. And so when before her cycle actually came, she was also like watching, like, oh, I wonder when it's going to come, is this it, is it happening, or those things, but in a very relaxed way.
Yeah.
And that's because we had the open conversation about it. And so she even felt comfortable. She started with just pads, but that's because that's what was available because I don't use tampons. But she
Yeah.
was, with going to
Mhm.
the beach and all that, because we annually go to the beach. And so for her, she's like, I don't want to, be wearing a pad. And so we went through the whole thing about, yeah, how
Here's
to
how you
how to
insert a
insert the
tampon.
tampon. It was so funny. She was like, I'm scared, I'm scared. And like she was trying to put it in. She actually had me help her put it in. And this we were literally we were at the beach when she
Nice.
tried her first tampon. We were at the beach and we were in a
Yeah.
Airbnb, and so we're in the bathroom. She's like, I don't know, I'm scared. And I'm like, it'll be fine, it'll be okay. And now she's a pro at it.
Yeah.
So
Good. And yeah, and see, even that level of comfort and with
mhm,
the body and to be able to ask your mother to
yeah,
even help, like, that's not that I don't think we had that I never had that issue, actually. Mom always
right. I
helped me
mean,
with
sometimes too much.
various
She'd be
things,
like, you want
but
me to do it for you? I'm like, I
yeah,
got this.
too much.
You're
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Like, I'm good. Yeah. But yeah, yeah. I think it is still, a thing though where you can have that level of comfort with a female, but I do wanna bring up if someone, was
Mhm,
raised by a male,
right.
a non-bleeder, that really, could be a different
Mhm,
conversation that we're having, and that they would not know, other than it's, "Hey, I need you to go find auntie so and so,"
right.
or, "I need to talk to some female
Mhm,
that we can trust that's in our circle, about this." But, if people don't even have an education on what they should
mhm,
know, even if it doesn't apply to them, that's what's dangerous.
yeah.
I'm seeing is, there are gonna be boys and men walking around
Mhm,
with no clue about what's going on with us, but are the ones that are going to, insert some kind of
mm,
control,
yeah.
I guess is for lack of a word,
Well,
systemic kind of issues that in our lives. And so, yeah, I do find it interesting that she's comfortable, but what if that was that situation of going to the beach and everything, she
Well,
could do
and
that when
that's
she
the thing
goes with
I
her
was
dad.
gonna.
Like, what if
Well,
she had
yeah.
gotten her
So that
period when she
actually
was with
has
him?
happened where she's gone there and needed pads, or I don't think she was using tampons at that time, but you know, going to the
Yeah,
store to get it, and Elena was
yeah.
never, and somewhat still is like very uncomfortable with purchasing things on her own. So like if I gave her
Hmm.
money and I'm like, no, you go up and do it yourself. She's like, no, just come with me. Like she's very,
She wants to
not
make sure
even
she's
so
making the
much the
right
choice.
choice.
It's like, because even like when we go to the market, you know, if I say, okay, I give her the card and I'm like, okay, you do this, like you check this out yourself. She's very like, she doesn't want to do it. Like I don't know what the fear is there, but
Hmm.
she's
Yeah,
getting over
interesting.
it now. But at one point she wouldn't go into the store herself.
Yeah,
And so when it's like her dad, when she's with her dad, sending him to get it, he doesn't get the right thing. So, and then
yeah,
it's
yeah.
embarrassing for her going
Exactly,
in with him
exactly.
to get it. So she goes with her grandmother.
Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah,
And she just like kind of dismisses him when it comes
yeah.
to
See,
that.
that's so. Do you think you'll like? So it's a beautiful way that, first of all, that you are open with her, and I think I've watched you be so much of an open book with her that Elena has
Hmm.
no excuse, like, to not feel
Right.
like she's can question anything. Um, and I've always admired that because
Hmm.
that's how I'm definitely gonna be with G. But I wanna know, like, now, based off of how you've been with 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 one child and then resetting the clock. You
Right.
almost had an empty nest, then you decided to hit the chess clock again and start all over. So, what are you gonna do this time? Are you
Oh,
gonna do the
absolutely.
same
Yes,
with
100%.
sexuality? That's what I wanted to hear. Like, I wanted it sounds like it didn't
Oh yeah,
there's
no,
nothing broke
I'm
with it.
definitely
So,
going to be an open book, especially with this one because she's very inquisitive. Um, yeah, and
yeah, I see that
so
she's
and she
curious.
has no
Yeah.
fear. Whereas Elena, she was more reserved. This one, she has no fear, so I
Yeah.
have to be an open book with her, and good and bad,
Okay.
you know.
And to give her the
Exactly,
whys that
so
you
that
never got.
so that she understands and can make a sound decision on things with having all
Yeah.
information and different perspectives.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. I'm gonna do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, like, that's what I said, I don't think there's anything that I am going to I mean, I know there's a lot that I'm going to add to the
Hmm.
way that I'm going to educate G, um, but I certainly do feel like I was trained,
Hmm.
whether however clinical it was, when I did learn about it, from mom directly, not just
Hmm.
from books and, culture. But also the way that we had to go through our own we both are just now discussing how we had to go through an education of our own bodies, of knowing all these things that we didn't know could happen, or
Right.
that we would have to be dealing with when it came to our own health, and especially for two reasons.
Hmm.
One, just the unknown, the general life unknown. But two, we also didn't know because we were just when something was
Hmm.
awkward or a miss, it was just
Right.
treated as bad periods. So now that we've broken through that word, that language, and that mentality, it does seem like we can teach our kids to be more
Yeah.
vocal about their health, to still be curious and to still demand, like, look, yeah, I know doctors are already always mad with patients that come in armed with
Yeah.
WMD, answers. But the point is, and I'm sure you not making light of situations, but yeah, I'm sure, like, you
Oh
see that
God,
even in
all
a
the time.
practice where you're working now, like, where people are gonna and so that's what they mean is people aren't gonna do that generally, if they're not sociopaths, they're not going to come do that and for any other reason other than they're trying to find an answer that something is wrong and they're
Mhm.
trying to seek something out. And I'm curious of how you are going to make sure that they are well aware of all these other issues, like these generational, like,
Mhm.
health issues that we have. Like, how are you gonna make sure that they are aware, like, "Oh, by the way, make sure when you're in like, okay, so when Elena goes off to college, she's gonna then have to start to be
Mhm.
responsible for her
Oh
medical
yeah.
history, her medical records." So, how are you gonna pass on that, making sure she knows
Well, I've kind of
what to
started
you know what I mean?
that already. So when she goes to the doctor, and I started this probably 2 years ago. When she goes to the doctor, I sit back and I let her, and I'll jump
Mm,
in if I need
mm.
to, but it's her point.
This
Yeah,
is her
I don't need to
appointment.
say anything.
Yeah,
You need to be able to
good
speak up
job,
and advocate for
good
yourself.
job.
And so we talk about it before we go into the doctor's office. Like, okay, these are the things that you mentioned to me. You need to remember those and mention it to them, and don't play it down when because she does have
Yes.
a habit of saying, "Oh, well, it's not that bad." It was like, "But you were just crying."
Yeah. Why do we do that?
Now
Why do
that's
we
one thing I
inherently
never
do
do.
that? We're
I'll go in it now. I do have a
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
She
Why
does
is
it
she
because
doing that?
one, she doesn't like the different treatments, or like especially like strep throat. Oh my goodness. When she has anything wrong with her throat and we go to the doctor, she's like, I know they're gonna swab and I don't want that. So she plays it down.
So she would rather not.
Yep.
Oh, see, she's doing
Yep.
grandmom.
She
She's
does
doing
it,
that
and she the when
I'd
but and
rather not talk about
that
it.
came from when she was younger. And I remember she was I don't remember how old she was, but they literally had to hold her down. She kicked a nurse off the little stool. That's how bad it was.
Oh my god.
And ever since then it's
Oh my
been
god.
traumatic for her. But it was like she had to get this, you
Wow.
know. And yeah, she literally kicked the lady and she hit the floor, and they were like, we need help. So they had someone else come in to help.
Oh my god. I'm shocked they didn't say like, "Yeah, we're gonna,
Right. So
cancel you.
I
We're
mean, they
firing you
still,
as
I
a
mean, she
patient."
still goes to that same doctor, now. And so
Yeah.
it's, I don't know. I have her go in and talk for herself. And
Well,
if she forgets something, like, hey, do you remember saying this to me? And then she's like, oh yeah. And I let her have that open conversation with the
yeah,
doctor so
okay.
she's
Yeah.
comfortable with it and prepared for when she has to do it alone.
Yeah. Well done. See, I'm learning, I didn't even think about that I mean, yes, I certainly understood, like, giving your child the autonomy to talk about themselves and to
Hmm.
own their experiences, um, because, yeah, to play it down, like, to
Hmm.
minimize a pain. Yeah, I get to minimize the pain because you don't want, you don't want the result, the solution or whatever,
Hmm.
you think that's gonna be just as painful. But to minimize it because you don't wanna be to make a fuss, like,
Right.
to be a burden or to be a
I
fuss,
don't get
like,
that either.
I
I'm
don't
like,
get
I'm
that,
coming to
like,
you. This is your job. You have to help me.
yeah.
So,
How is it with you and your daughter having been under the same roof? Like, are y'all reaching for the same type of foods, the same type of remedies? Are you, you know, like, is she teaching you something new about, like,
oh
what the
my
kids are doing on
God.
TikTok about
No.
for their periods? Or are you know what I mean? Like, are you imparting wisdom on her? Like, "Oh, by the
Yeah,
way,"
so
you
we
know?
don't really go for like the same foods now, but
Okay.
she I've like she does kind of the same thing that I do. Like for me, the first thing I do when my cycle is coming, I'm like, I just want to sleep, you know? And she does that.
Yeah.
But she's also got some other health stuff going on, like some GI things going on, which cause her to just like crash and
Yeah.
just like sleep. And so
Yeah.
um she gets the pain and the bloating and all of that. But for her, she's kind of like me with like, I gotta push through because I still have things to do. So it's, and
Yeah.
she doesn't like to take pain medication. And which I never really liked taking it either.
Hmm.
I would just much rather just lay down, go to sleep until it's over, you know. Um, but
Mhm.
when you
Yeah.
can't do that,
Yeah.
when you actually have to go into the office, or for her, when you actually have to do your schoolwork, you know, the thing I've most seen that she does is just kind of like, one, lots of water, um but then also
Yeah.
just like making sure she's just comfortable, even though she has to do her work, but in a comfortable spot, and making sure she's just
Okay.
um
Yeah.
still trying to do that self-care while you still have to function
Yeah.
for the day. um and then as far as like remedies,
Yeah.
like for me, um there's not there's the main thing that I usually use, because it was for cramps, was red wine. And so sometimes I'll give her a glass, um, so that,
Yeah.
because it just causes you to relax, and it does have the
Yeah, exactly.
like I would call healing properties. And then warm showers. That always helps too.
Yeah. No, these are see,
Hmm.
this is like these are basics. Like that's what I mean is,
Right.
it's not gonna be the same for everyone. And I recognize too. I hope mom would never kill me for saying this, but I also know that she totally have to like own this. But I always felt like mom had more of like a Kathy comic strip mentality about
Yes.
her approach to periods. It was like the
Yes.
chocolate, the like
Hmm.
heating pad, and like just curling up with some coffee or
Hmm.
tea or something for
And you
her.
know what? That's actually one thing
Um,
I don't do for myself, and I didn't recommend it for Elena, but I was like, you could try it, because some people say um, caffeine helps, but for me, it makes it worse.
yeah, yeah. So, and especially if you're
Hmm.
dealing with the migraines and stuff, but
Yep.
caffeine was mom's thing, right? Like that was what would placate her. And so I think that was kind of in my head. And so I know when Eric and I first started dating, I'm sure he probably thought the same. And so it used to be like his go-to kit was he just grabbed Snickers bars, so like something like some kind of hot tea, like
Hmm.
and something salty, like pretzels or something. Um, so yeah, that's why I was asking the question was, what does that look like in your house? Like, is there this golden like
Nope.
cupboard or
Like,
pantry
cause it,
where it's like break in case of emergency? But it
yeah,
is
but
those
it's
those
very
other like
random
tricks
too.
and
Like the
and
things that I crave when my cycle is on. Now, James can tell when my cycle's coming, because
really based off
yeah,
of
and
what you
not
want
that
to
it's
eat
the
or what
same
you're
thing
asking
all the
for.
time, but he's
Yeah,
like,
of course.
that's weird.
Yeah.
And like the combination is weird. And he's like,
Yeah.
your cycle must be coming.
Yeah.
So, and the thing with Elena, she always likes fast food all the time and snacks and stuff. So it doesn't change much for her when her cycle's on.
Yeah. What do you think should be the future of care in the sense of what should be addressed? Whether it's how Suvali grows up and goes to school or wherever she gets it from the societal um, influences, from the lessons from
Hmm.
you, what we see in media, like what we see in schools. What is it that you think should be like the future of our care with
The
menstruation?
first thing is, it starts at home. If you're raising a daughter, you have to be knowledgeable and open, so that they
Hmm.
aren't getting, like, I don't want someone out there teaching Savali at this point, teaching her about
Hmm.
menstruation and the different things to look out for. I don't want someone else, because they're not going to come from a place of like sharing wisdom. They're coming from a place, well, like what
Hmm.
I remember from school is like a place of like the scare tactic, in a sense,
Yeah. Oh, yes.
you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, that's what we started this conversation
Right.
with,
Yeah.
was, like,
I
that
don't want that.
negative
I want it
connotation
to
that's
be
there.
where it's a very real and welcoming experience. So as far as care, I mean, I would love it from like a medical side. I would love it if everyone if it was just like across the board where when I say this is what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing, you take that and you believe it and you do something about it or
Mhm.
help me figure it out. Not
Mhm.
just, okay, well, typically this is what it is just based off of my words. No, look into it, you know. I had an experience with a doctor
Mhm.
where um I said, I'm not sure what this is. I won't go into like details, but I'm like, I'm not sure what this is, and I'm describing it. And he's like, oh, it's this. And it's like, you didn't even look at it. Like, can you take a look at it? And
Yeah.
he's like, oh no, it just sounds like this. But maybe it's not. And so I went and got a second opinion, and it wasn't what he thought. And so that's
Wow.
the thing. It's like with healthcare, it's like they're lazy. They are very lazy, and it's like, okay, this is what it looks like in the book, but everyone's different. And so it's like,
Mhm. Mhm.
I need you to treat me for me, not based off of everyone else. And that's what
Yeah.
I would like to see when it comes to women's health. It's very different for every
Yeah.
woman. So don't treat me the way you treat Susie over here just because it sounds the same
Yeah.
or looks the same or you
Yeah.
know it no, I want you to look into my health for me.
Yeah.
Right.
My
Mhm.
whole full story. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's where I think we're gonna take this forward with the future. My answer would be, I'm looking at, the way we have these
Mhm.
conversations, so just even this platform, and ability to talk about these things. But I also wanted to talk about how we do it,
Mhm.
even in a creative manner. So, as we have this theme of, looking at generational traumas, but also looking at within our
Mhm.
ancestry and our histories, where we can seek answers or seek,
Yeah.
solutions internally, is the self healing. But looking at the past to evolve and to go towards the future. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about is that I will be working with, Elena. So our family has a stake in how we can correct what you and I just
Mhm.
discussed over the last hour or so, of how we had two different experiences with menstruation,
Mhm.
but where we came out on it, like how we picked ourselves up and, like, just decided to take
Mhm.
onus for our health and how we're gonna take it forward. So I'm thinking about, like our great uncle, Elijah, who had a public health campaign centered around, um, identifying strokes within the
Yeah.
African
Mhm.
American community. And the way he did it was just through
Mhm.
barbershops, like just going in and talking to people about putting up these posters where it can give somebody the first clues, because that somebody's in a chair, they're a captive audience, that's the social
Right.
watering hole, so to speak, of where people go and talk about things. So it is the very definition of using something like what the
Mhm.
French call the salon, of the salon being a place where people gather to talk about ideas and exchange, conversation. Um, and so I look for that as the future,
Right.
for menstruation for us. There's got to be different ways that we approach this, and not just
Mhm.
through memes and jokes, and that's certainly, digestible content, or ways that we should train,
Right.
the newer generation. Totally understand that. Totally here for it. But it doesn't mean there's a lot for us to undo from,
Mhm.
the old guards as well. So, like, going into companies, and making sure that they do have products
Right.
available for their staff, uh, as we were discussing earlier, or making sure that the curriculum that is in school does not mirror the curriculum of, say, that of a state of, Florida,
Girl.
Florida, um, or anywhere else that seems to just be walking themselves
Right.
into
Mhm.
Neanderthal times. So, yeah, I would hope that would be the future for us, and what I mean, at least what I'm doing here, or what the team is
Mhm.
doing here with the Renaissance period, what you and I are
Right.
doing, like, within our family, um, with our girls. And I would say, taking it forward, you have a lot of, um,
Mhm.
space too, um, to preach this gospel
Yeah.
in your worlds as well. And so if we all just kept kind of coming together and having these really blunt, really honest conversations, then I think we would scare enough of the old
I
guards
agree. Yeah.
away,
I mean, because my whole
that we
thing
could.
is like when mom talks about things and she's like, "Well, that's what I did with y'all." It's like, but we're different people. They're different
Yep.
than I was when I was a kid, and times have changed.
Yeah.
Doesn't just
Yeah.
because that's the way it worked then doesn't
Absolutely.
mean that's what has to happen now.
Well, thank you, my dear. I love you, and I'm really glad we had this conversation, and I know we're gonna expand on it, in the future, but thank you for joining us. Yeah. Thank you for joining us, and this was Rebellious Voices, with the Renaissance period and our guest, Kimberly Waters, for the second half of our conversation about menstruation and, generational conversations. Liked what you heard? Want to find out more? Or do you just want to throw your radical thoughts into a safe space? Well, here's how you can find these rebellious voices. Remember, this isn't just a revolution. This isn't just a rebellion. This is a renaissance. This is our renaissance.